In today's episode, we go to Brighton, where a chance meeting between two groups would result in the murder of a promising footballer, life-changing injuries for two others, and a killer who was out on licence for a very similar attack. We go back to the 1st December 2019 to the Arch nightclub in Brighton. Iftikhar Kondekar, his younger brother Irfan Kondekar, and his pal Umesh Ravatan had gone out, and they were worse for wear during the night out in Brighton. Irfan had never been to Brighton, so older brother Iftikhar said they'll all go. They took their father's BMW X6 without permission, and the South London trio arrived in Brighton and hit the local night spots. The group then entered and spent the rest of the evening at the Arch nightclub. During the night out, Iftikhar got so drunk he fell asleep in the actual nightclub. The group, all worse for wear, decided to call it a night, and all the trio left. Outside the nightclub, the three men began walking the seafront, back to their BMW that was parked a mile away. Iftikhar decided it was too late to find a hotel. Ahead of the group was a party of 5 from South Crawley in Sussex that had been out celebrating. Saul Delgado, a footballer from Loxwood FC, and his friends were celebrating the 22nd birthday of their mate, Arman Elias. On Marine Walk, the two groups approached and confronted each other. It was not known how or why it started, but an argument broke out. It became more aggressive with both groups. It soon resulted in pushing match and then a fight. Both groups started attacking each other with their belts, then pushing and fists being thrown. Iftikhar and his brother were the main aggressors. Saul Delgado was knocked to the ground, and after a couple of minutes of pushing and shoving, it returned to an argument. The two groups backed away and went their separate ways. Iftikhar, a few minutes later, had noticed his face was bleeding. Enraged, feeling he'd lost the fight, where in reality, the 5-man group had come off worse from the encounter. In the South London group, Iftikhar Kondekar was raging, a man with very serious anger issues. Previously, while on licence for breaking a man's jaw, he had spent then the next 9 years in prison for GBH for running a man over in his car in a deliberate attack. Iftikhar had been released from his sentence 4 months ago on licence. He also had previous convictions for drug offences and another case of GBH and battery. Iftikhar Kondekar told his brother Irfan to come with him to the BMW. They were going back to find him. The Kondekar's brother's friend thought the idea was stupid and tried to calm the brothers down. The brothers walked off and left him behind. Back at the father's parked BMW X6, Iftikhar got in the driver's seat and Irfan leapt into the passenger side. Both brothers were extremely intoxicated and Iftikhar was angry and raging from the encounter. Witnesses then described heavy revving of a car, almost that someone had their foot completely to the floor. The BMW pulled out of the parking space and drove back up Marine Walk towards the group. The group of 5 friends were crossing the road by the Sea Life Centre towards Brighton Palace Pier when the BMW raced up and hit them. The car flung 3 of the group like rag dolls, with one being thrown over the car completely. The BMW didn't slow down and it didn't stop. It carried on and it was dumped a mile away in Middle Street. The 2 brothers phoned for an Uber and went back to South London. Back at the scene of the hit and run, Saul Delgado was fatally injured and suffered devastating brain injuries. He died a short while later in hospital. His 2 friends, Zakir Khan, who was 19 years old, and Azan Khan, 23 years old, who were cousins, also received life-threatening injuries. A murder investigation was launched. It was a heavy CCTV area and police gathered witness statements, and there was many. They described a BMW X6 revving and driving at speed on the wrong side of the road. One witness said after the BMW hit the group, it looked like one of the victims was sitting on the bonnet before he came off. Forensics measured the collision. A conservative estimate of speed of the X6 was between 35 and 41 miles an hour. The road on the seafront was closed for 3 days. The abandoned BMW was tracked to Middle Lane, where it was found parked up and abandoned. It didn't take long for police to trace the BMW and the two brothers. Iftikhar Kundekar was arrested later that day. Irfan Kundekar handed himself into police several days later. Due to the extensive CCTV footage, Iftikhar Kundekar was confirmed as the driver and Irfan Kundekar the passenger. The Kundekars' brothers' defence had been that they had been scared after a confrontation and fight that evening and tried to get away from the situation. They wasn't aware they hit anyone. They thought someone had thrown something at the car, and after being hit with the object, they sped away. The prosecution responded and said, so a man cartwheeling in the air over your car after you hit him, and one actually sitting on your bonnet, you didn't see them. From CCTV and witness statements, the car was deliberately driven at the group crossing the road. Iftikhar denied the murder, but admitted to death by dangerous driving. The jury sat through, hearing all the evidence including police forensics of the hit and run and CCTV footage. The Kundekars' story wasn't believable. Iftikhar intended to cause a group of 5 serious injury by deliberately driving into them. He was driving to kill. And knowing that was the case, his brother Irfan had knowingly helped him flee the area. The jury, after 16 hours, found Iftikhar Kundekar, 34 years old, guilty of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. His brother Irfan Kundekar, 27 years old, was found guilty of assisting an offender by helping his brother escape the crime. On the 25th of January 2021, at Hove Crown Court, sentences on the 2 brothers were passed down. Iftikhar Kundekar, 34 years old, was found guilty of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and will serve a minimum term of 26 years. Irfan Kundekar, who was 27 years old, was found guilty of assisting an offender and was sentenced to 3 years. The absolute love that poured in for victim Sal Delgado was off the charts, with community speaking of his warmth and kind nature and a proud and loving family. He was destined for great things, but an unfortunate meeting with the Kundekars. If they had left just 10 minutes later from that nightclub, the groups would never have met. Iftikhar Kundekar had served time before for running someone down. He had a string of GBH and drug convictions and a police chase years before in his father's car. A volatile man who has no control over his anger had taken his rage out on some kids in their teens and early 20s. With Sal Delgado losing his life and 2 others injured with life-changing injuries, including one of the men losing his sight and both with serious leg and brain injuries. That night, it was 3 men who had their lives taken from them.